permission, we can begin the program. Sir, Secretary Saheb, can you unmute?
Yes. Let us begin our program.
Yes, the program.
Yes.
Maunus.
Namaste, sir.
Carry on. Welcome to
Yes.
the guest and everybody.
Ji namaste, sir. So with your permission, let us start this program, sir, and we shall start this program with an invocation. There will be a short prayer in the beginning. I would request all the attendees to mute their mics, sit straight, close their eyes, and breathe deep. Okay. Oh. Sharada Sharadam Bhojavadana Vadanam Bhuje Sarvada Smakam Sannidhim Kriya Namaste Stuvyasa Vishala Buddhe Fullaravindayat Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharat Taila Purno Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradeepa Om. Thank you very much. So, Honorable Patel, sir, the Secretary of Charutar Vidya Mandal, Principal Dr. Bosa, Honorable Chief Guest of today, Dr. Anandan, sir, my dear colleagues, all the invited guests, and dear students. We know that today is the birthday of our beloved founder, Dr. H.M. Patel, sir. The institute, which is named on his name, H.M. Patel Institute of English Training and Research, it was founded in 1965 by Dr. H.M. Patel himself. The proud son of India, the man of the soil of Gujarat, he was a man with a vision to cater the need of competent English teachers at various levels. It was his visionary guidance, friends, that led the inception of this institute in 1965. So this is the 56th year of the establishment of the institute, and it is 118th year that late Dr. H.M. Patel sir has entered. I'm glad that today we have, every year we celebrate his birthday as a Founders Day, and every year we have some ELT scholar delivers the H.M. Patel Memorial Speech. We are fortunate that this year we have Dr. Anandan, sir, the great scholar, man of ELT, man of linguistics. He has been agreed. And I request our principal, sir, Dr. Bosa, to welcome him and all the guests. Over to you, Bosa.
Thank you, Maunus. I'm so happy to see all of you on the screen. I would like to pay tribute to Dr. H.M. Patel Saheb, for his contribution. Maunus has already mentioned many, things about him, so I don't want to extend that speech. CVM, Charutar Vidya Mandal, Public Trust, has a vision of, uplifting society. For years, decades, they have been doing that. We need not, lecture on that, but it is, the imprint is already left in Gujarat and India and world over. When I approached Dr. S.T. Patel sir and our beloved chairman sir and joint secretary Talati sir, they readily agreed after reading Dr. Anandan's profile. Here, simply they told, please invite him participate on this auspicious occasion. So I welcome Honorable Secretary Dr. S.T. Patel sir. He has been an inspiration to me, especially to organize such programs at the institute. He used to tell me that the institute should, conduct every semester. There is to be some programs should go on along with the classroom teaching. Thank you very much, sir, for joining this once again. Now we have Sir Anandan, sir. I was wanted to talk to him on phone. So I in fact, took the assistance of my cousin, Dr. T.P. Kaladaran. He was very close to him. He told you, he's so humble person, you can just talk to him direct. So I rang him and he was so happy to accept our invitation. Dr. Anandan is a product of CFL. He is the first Indian linguist to conceive a universal grammar-based second language acquisition program in Indian context. Discourse-oriented pedagogy, as conceptualized by Anandan, has been instrumental for bringing about a paradigm shift in second language pedagogy in the states of Kerala, Telangana, and Andhra Pradesh. The theoretical postulates of discourse-oriented pedagogy derive impetus from the insight contained in linguistic theories, second language acquisition theories, cognitive psychology, constructivist theories, Gestalt theories, and critical pedagogy. Discourse-oriented pedagogy is being still practiced in the states of Kerala and Telangana. Sir has published a number of papers, research papers in various renowned journals, and published a number of books. I mention only a few here, which I am familiar with. One is Tuition to Intuition and Freedom from the Imperial Shackles. And his book on Chomskyan Revolution Linguistics, which was written in Malayalam, has won the Kerala Sahitya Academy Endowment Award in 2006. Over the past 2 decades, Sir has conceived several programs that incorporate discourse-oriented pedagogy. This includes second language acquisition program, rapid acquisition of competence English, which I am happy that I have taken this as a project, and one of my research scholars is working on this program now. I think Dr. Chirag Dargi is there. He has taken over this project. A multimedia program for the adolescent learners. Rapid English acquisition program, promoting acquisition competence in English, facilitating acquisition of competence in English, acquiring competence in English, and special package acquiring competence in English program for different agencies and NGOs. Sir is very active now in Telangana, and he has a number of new projects taken at that stage. I welcome you, sir. I'm so happy that you are with us today. We are eager to wait for your speech on constructive perspectives on second language pedagogy. Welcome, sir. I also welcome Joint Secretary Talati sir and Dr. Anish Joshi from IFLU and all other distinguished guests. I welcome my faculties and friends and students on this occasion. There are many scholars, I can just see them, the PhD scholars on the screens. Welcome all of you, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. We can see that so many scholars and guests have joined our meeting from all across India. Welcome to all of you. Now, without wasting much time, we shall start listening to Dr. K.N. Anandan, sir. Actually, sir, from the day both sir told us that you have agreed to speak on this occasion, we were so thrilled because such a long journey and such huge work, Herculean task as an academician, we are all eager to listen to you, sir. In the beginning, in the prayer, I said that Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha. I'm sure that your speech would be a Jnanamaya Pradipaha, and its light will always help us. Sir, it is all now. The proceedings is up to you. Over to you, sir. K. N. Anandan, sir.
Thank you. A very good morning to all the celebrities here. And also my special thanks to Bose and who has hooked me from Kerala to this wonderful occasion. Okay. And I consider it a big honor to be a part of this celebration, 117th Founder Day. This is really, in fact, the whole fraternity of ELT across the world has to honor, Patel sir, who has made a contribution, a rich contribution to this field, and also been, kind enough to found an institution which is carrying out the heritage of Dr. Patel. All the people here working, our Patel sir, Secretary Saheb, everyone is carrying forward that flame which Dr. H.M. Patel has left us. And it is a responsibility, academic responsibility, as well as social responsibility to carry this torch forward and keep spreading, building up good resource team, in English. Because English becomes such a commercial product now. Yesterday I talked to Bose. ELT is almost like an industry, larger than steel industry. So it has a lot of marketing potential, and that people are doing, always. Every agency is coming forward. So when people like me working on ELT, on the other side, you have all the corporate sector, big, agencies, well famous agencies, and then you have to fight, with them to see that certain things are done in a proper way. So I, without beating around the bush, thank you for giving me such a pleasant introduction, my boss and others also. I'm happy that I have been able to do little work in the field, and I would like to continue the work I'm doing right now. And it will be my, my privilege, to talk to teachers who are in the field of English language teaching, wherever they are, So, in fact, this hectic work has taken away all my private life in one way, okay? And I work up to 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the night. I work around 16 hours at my laptop. This has been my practice for the last 25 years or more than 25 years. So, and when I think about the amount of work that we have to do as individually as well as in collaboration with others, it is so much that we are just picking up a tiny grain in the whole ocean, kind of thing, of sand. Anyway, I will end at my topic, okay? And you have chosen the topic, constructivist perspective on second language pedagogy. See, every word is loaded. That's the problem. When you talk about constructivism, it is a heavily loaded word. When you talk about pedagogy or second language, every word is heavily loaded. So I will try to, touch at least the periphery of this paradigm, which today I call it discourse-oriented pedagogy. That name was given by Telangana people, in fact. So let me briefly talk about, how this paradigm emerged. Probably in between 1930s and 1950s. Am I audible, my friends? Can you hear me, all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you very much.
Yes,
So,
sir.
yeah, thank you, sir. During 1930s and 50s, the leading schools of thought were in the field of psychology, what we call today is behaviorism. In the field of linguistics, there was structuralism. And in the field of philosophy, there was empiricism, the three leading schools. Now, these three leading schools of thought, decided how knowledge is to be transmitted or how teaching has to take place, and decided the course material, the content of the courses, and the methodology. Everything was decided by the the collaboration of these three schools of thought, and that still continues. I said specifically between 1930s and 1950s. So it was 1957 when world received a spark, when Chomsky came out with the idea that language does not come from outside, it is very much inside now, it is innate for human being. So the idea that, human beings are born with language was not easily accepted, okay? A lot of controversies emerged, during 1950s, 60s, and sometimes it still continues. So the controversy, on one line of controversy was that people asking a question, okay, if human beings are born with the language, then why doesn't a human child start speaking language the moment it is born? It appears to be a very genuine question, but not so genuine also, okay? Yeah, it appears to be, to layman, it appears to be a very sensible question. Okay, there is an inbuilt language, so there is nothing to learn from language from the outside, from the speech community. Then why doesn't a human child start speaking language the moment it is born? The mother tongue, of course, or any other language. But then nobody thinks about the question, why doesn't a human child start walking the moment it is born? The newborn child has every system intact. The skeletal system, tissue system, everything. Every system is intact. And not even a single system is added after birth. Then why doesn't the human child start walking the moment it is born? This is a similar question. Okay. So people know, and mothers of course know, there are certain milestones to be covered. The child, lies on its belly, it holds onto something and stands up and takes the first step. These are the milestones of walking. Like that, language learning also has certain milestones. You cannot skip these milestones. No enthusiastic mother will start teaching a child how to walk. And similarly, nobody teaches us the mother tongue. Nobody. It just happens. That's why at some point Chomsky said, language learning is not something that the individual does. It is something that happens to a child. It's just happening and you are not aware of that. And that is why we talk about the non-conscious process or subconscious process of acquiring a language. And thanks to Krashen, Stephen Krashen, maybe most of you are familiar with Krashen. And Krashen was proposing the idea that, in fact, there are two kinds of learning. Like you call it a conscious learning, which you call learning, and then non-conscious learning or subconscious learning, which you call acquisition. So there is a shift from the conscious way of learning about language to conscious, a non-conscious way of learning language. Now, it is very easy to theoretically differentiate between the two. When you say conscious learning, what do you mean by that? And when you say subconscious learning, what do you mean by that? So this is not easy to demonstrate in the classroom teaching program, because the moment you start dealing with children at any level for that matter, you have to think about teaching something. So how can you even get rid of the idea of teaching itself? It is practically impossible. ELT is a cliche that way, English language teaching. If language is within, what is there to teach? What will you teach in language? It is a huge question. And unless you remove certain misconceptions about language, this concept cannot be understood easily. So let me spend some time on on touching upon these misconceptions of language. Now, one misconception is that language is written. Of course, language is not written. Everyone knows that language is primarily speech. There is no script. There are many languages without any script. So you cannot, imagine teaching language by teaching letters Let us imply writing something, reading something. But unfortunately, if you look at any course material, especially for the beginners, you find A for apple kind of lessons. Every parent feels honored, when he possesses a book for his kid. A for apple, B for blah, blah, blah kind of thing. Okay. If language is not written, it's only speech, then why do you bother about writing at all? Of course, in formal education, we have to cater to that also. But then you need a methodology or an approach that will not put the innate language at stake. I'll explain this point a moment after. So the second misconception is that about language is thought. It is not true. Language is not thought. You need language to express your thought, but you cannot equate language to thought. Let me ask you a very simple question. In which language do we think? If you ask anybody, they will say that, okay, we'll think in mother tongue. It's very convincing, When you say, okay, we think in mother tongue, and even ELT experts sometimes say, our problem with the second language learners is that they conceive an idea, they think in mother tongue, and then try to switch over to English. That is why there is a delay in expressing language. We accept it in a taken for granted manner. So do we really think in language? In which language do we think? Just think about people who are by birth deaf and dumb. They have not received any language signal, okay, and they have not spoken, even uttered any syllable, but they also think. They have emotions, and they express their body language. Using body language, they communicate. So, a deaf and dumb person born in India or anywhere in any part of the world, how does he think? Which language? Obviously, it is not a nameable language. That is why Steven Pinker, in his wonderful book called Language Instinct, probably some of you are familiar with that title, Steven Pinker, Language Instinct. There's a chapter on that. He says, we think in images. Not any specific language, but human beings think in images. Images are formed. For example, sometimes we have dreams. And a dream, suppose you want to talk about that dream, you may take some time to talk about that, narrate that dream. If you write it, you may take pages after pages, you may need that. But that dream may have occurred in a fraction of a second. What's the duration of a dream? It's not like a mega TV serial. It's very short time, because we have these clear images in the mind. So if we think in images, then a sensible question for every teacher is to ask, how do you instill images in the minds of learners? If you admit that, we think in images. So there is no question of teaching any specific language. How do you instill images in their mind? This will be the priority. Anyway, we'll come to that also. Another misconception is related to grammar. Okay? You open any course book at any level, you find lessons on grammar. So people say if you have the basics of grammar, and without these basics of grammar, people cannot speak language, use language. And they start teaching grammar. And nobody questions that also. You call it formal grammar, you call it, functional grammar, whatever. And recently people talk about communicative grammar. I don't know what that is, but people talk about that also, okay? But do we have to teach grammar? That's the question, What is grammar then? Suppose you want to teach grammar at any level, forget the level, okay? What will you teach in the beginning? People may start with the parts of speech. They may give definition also to categorize words as nouns, verbs, prepositions, and so on. And nobody questions that. And they say, like an axiom, there are 8 parts of speech. Do you believe that there are 8 parts of speech? Or less than that, or more than that? You have to question. That's what critical pedagogy demands us to ask questions. So take for granted, why do you categorize? All the words are to be accommodated in one of these 8 columns. Is it possible? Take simple words like yes and no. There are many. So yes, no, where will you put? These 2 words or similar words do not belong to any of these 8 columns. You need a 9th column, probably you may need a 10th column, and so on. So you cannot be satisfied with the idea of parts of speech. You look at words from a different perspective. And you have to sort of identify a grammatical category, not by definition, but by the distribution of these words in connected speech. How are these words distributed? So take an example like read. Yeah, it looks like a verb. But then when I say Harry Potter is an interesting read, that appears as a noun. Okay, this is frequently read novel where it is an adjective. So it is a distributional property which it decides the category, not a definition. And there is a danger in going by definitions because most words have double memberships. Any noun, is also a verb, and any verb is also a noun. In isolation, you ask, okay, identify this as nouns and verbs and give a list of words like book, table, fan, floor. It appears that they are all nouns, but you never think that they are also verbs. So you are giving wrong information to the learners by giving wrong definitions, whether it is about parts of speech, whether it is about tenses. Everywhere, the grammar book is a bundle of, errors, erroneous definitions, which nobody questions. It is still, being taught, and most of it appears in the textbooks also. Okay, and we have to problematize it. We linguists, talk about tenses in a different way. For the last 50 years, 55 years, we've been talking that there are only 2 tenses in English, present tense and past tense. There is no future tense as such. So the problem is that, you believe that by learning grammar, you learn language. It doesn't happen. Grammar is a discipline by itself. We are native speakers of our mother tongue. And across the world, no native speaker can make an error, a grammatical error in mother tongue. It is impossible because you are governed by the inbuilt grammar, which you are not aware of. It is like our breathing. When you breathe, you are not aware that you are breathing. It just happens. But when you go to a doctor, the doctor asks you, okay, take a deep breath, then you are consciously breathing. Otherwise, you are not. It is there very much, every time, always with you. So this inbuilt grammar is so strong, but nobody feels its presence. And not only that, the crime is really that you avoid this inbuilt grammar and keep pouring in information related to language. You teach grammar, maybe with definitions, unscientific categorizations, unscientific explanations. Every grammar book, you name a grammar book which is acceptable as a pedagogical grammar. There's a wonderful paper by Vivian Cook, talks about how do you develop a perspective on pedagogical grammar. That grammar is yet to be written. Okay, nobody has thought about that. So, if you look at the inherent problems with language teaching, it's a mountain of a problem, not a single problem, Several problems are there. I'm just trying to mention a few of them. So, one challenge is that how do you make the shift from consciously learning about non-consciously acquiring the language system? Okay, that is one challenge. Second thing is that how to define, knowledge of language. That also is a big question, What do you mean by knowledge of language? Do you mean the grammar which I mentioned a moment ago? Knowledge about, I even doubt whether it is knowledge or information. Whether you are talking about, the grammar concepts. Is it knowledge or is it information? Memorized information? I'm switching back to Krashen again. Now, Krashen has very clearly said it. If you teach grammar, this grammar helps you as a conscious monitor. Conscious monitor. What does that mean? When you are indulging in a conscious activity, for example, writing something or editing a written work, you can invoke this conscious knowledge of grammar. But speech is not a conscious activity. Speech is spontaneous. You don't memorize a speech and deliver it. So when you're indulging in a non-conscious activity like speaking in speech, you have no access to the conscious grammar you have learned. You don't think, whether I have to use present tense now, simple sentence, complex sentence. You don't think like that. You just spontaneously respond to a situation. That's all. And all the grammar will be available with you if you have acquired the language. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. Okay. So, as I said, what we mean by knowledge of language? Well, this question was first posed by Chomsky in 1957. He posed 3 questions. What constitutes knowledge of language? Question number 1. Number 2, how is this knowledge acquired? And number 3, how this knowledge of language put to use? For convenience, the first 2 problems, that means what is knowledge of language, how is it acquired? These questions together we call as Plato's problem. I'll explain. Plato was the first person to be very curious about the way human beings, manifest their knowledge. Plato was saying, okay, human experience is very limited and their head is very small, but man can talk about God, angels, heaven, even though they have not, no human being has directly experienced all these things. So how can man get the knowledge about this? Not to experience anyway. Okay. So Plato was saying it is reminiscence of pre-existence. It may not be a scientifically acceptable, interpretation. But today we say language is genetically programmed. It is a coded information in the human genes. Okay. So there a contradiction begins. If it is programmed, a special kind of wiring is happening in mind. It is there already, though you are not aware of that, and this is genetically transmitted. Now, this statement, clashes with the Marxist philosophy of looking at language, where they say language is a social product. Okay, no human beings can construct knowledge. Though Esperanto is there, I keep aside Esperanto for the time being. Okay, I hope you understand what Esperanto is. Esperanto is the human-made language. Okay, now you have several YouTube lectures on Esperanto. Okay, now you my friends, Prabal Dasgupta, he's an expert in, international expert in Esperanto. Now, this, when you talk about the knowledge of language, it contradicts to the statement language is a social construct. Because the typical Chomskyan claim is that language is innate. So where do you stand? How do you conceptualize language? As an innate individual construct or as a social product? So these are, polemical things. A thing cannot be a social construct, alone, or it cannot be an individual construct alone. So somehow you have to look at it deeply, then realize that, okay, both are involved. It is like the 2 sides of a coin, okay? And one cannot be separated from the other. Even language, okay? Language, one aspect of language is socially constructed. Remember, our topic is social constructivism, constructivist perspective. So what do we construct? That's a question. So what is innate then with regard to language? What is innate construct and what is social construct? Are you able to differentiate between the 2? If you are able to differentiate between the social construct on the one hand and the individual construct on the other, okay, how do you develop a pedagogy on that, blending these two things together? So you have to look at every sentence from a structural point of view and also from a functional point of view. Take a simple sentence like this is a book, okay? You know it has a specific structure, all right? Now, awareness of this structure is innate, but the functionality of the sentence is not innate. It is socially negotiated. That's why you can use the same sentence in different contexts with the different meanings. So the structure this is can serve different communicative functions. To identify an object, to talk about relationship, talk about possessions, give an opinion. This is nice, okay? So you have all these functionalities of this structure, and I believe these functionalities are socially negotiable. So perhaps you can say that, okay, the functional aspect of language is socially constructed, and the structural part of it is individually constructed because it is genetically programmed. It is very much there. The universal grammar predicts the possible structures. So there is a way of to deal with that. As I told you, our topic is how to help children construct knowledge of language. So the prime requirement is to define knowledge of language itself. So I'll come back to my three original questions. Plato's problem, what is knowledge of language, how it's constructed or how it is acquired. Today we call it, Plato's problem because language has a similar context. Imagine a child living in a nuclear family in a flat culture. People do not mingle socially, okay? And examine the kind of linguistic input the child gets. No parent talks to a child using full-fledged sentences. In most occasions, it is just a smile or some fragments or short responses or yes and no kind of thing. Very short, very, very short, fragmentary. But at the age of 2, every child is able to produce language. His language knowledge is full. So in spite of the limited evidence the child gets from speech community, the knowledge he manifests is enormous. That is why the behavioral theory of stimulus-response relationship doesn't work in language context. The stimulus here is the input, and this input is fragmentary, broken utterances, but the output is full manifestation of the knowledge of language. And that is why today we talk about the poverty of stimulus argument. The stimulus is impoverished, but the output is enormous. And this is a wonderful thing happening in language acquisition. You have very finite means, but you can use this finite means infinitively because language is a generative system. Okay. Now, if you switch over to the third question, how is knowledge of language put to use? People are yet to understand this question and still to work on this question. In initial days of my career as in the ELT field, I've been struggling with the Plato's problem. How do you facilitate knowledge construction in language, second language? Okay, but then, as I explained earlier, the paraphrase of Plato's problem is, in spite of limited evidence, the child is able to acquire knowledge of language. How does this happen? I said poverty of stimulus. The stimulus is impoverished, but the language output is enormous. Now, when you go to the Orwell's problem, you get the reverse situation. In spite of enormous evidence, man doesn't learn anything. See the paradox of human mind. It is the same mind. With limited evidence, the child can build up knowledge of language. Plato's problem. Okay, but in spite of any number of evidences, man doesn't learn anything. See the paradox? The inherent paradox of human mind. The mind is involved in acquiring knowledge of language, using knowledge of language. The mind is involved. But then the situation is such that as a social being, though we have any number of evidences, basically human beings do not learn anything. This is Orwell's problem. I'm talking about George Orwell, who wrote Animal Farm, a 1984 novel. You know, how the human thinking is, or how the rulers, try to eliminate even the thought process of human beings. 1984 is a classic example of that. So my personal belief is that unless you work out a solution, how you help children to use language in a social context, you need a different kind of pedagogy for that. Once I talked to Chomsky about it, okay. When he visited Kerala, I posed one question, only one question, which nobody understood, but only Chomsky understood. Anyway, he has to. The question was, what is the social analog of move alpha? That's my question. That's my question. What is the social analog of move alpha? So he told me there's a lot way to go forward. Probably William Humboldt began the discussion, and we have to carry it forward. So this area is to be tackled now. How do you, simultaneously cater to both problems? I mean, Plato's problem as well as, Orwell's problem. So unless we use language in the socio-political discourses that emerge, the amount of narratives that emerge in the field of politics, in the field of religion, in the field of, our social life, people have lost tracking of what is a reliable source of information. Now people can fabricate information, people can fabricate videos, and you can have all kind of narratives emerging. A narrative emerges on any topic, and within a few days counter narratives emerge. So there is a lot of narratives and also counter narratives. It goes on. And nobody can stop that, because that is the wonderful capability of human being. People think differently, and we have to admit that. At the same time, certain basic facts should not be missing. So there's a problem in understanding language and also how to help children at any level to develop knowledge in such a way that they can intervene in social phenomena. But to do that, you have to understand language as a phenomenon. So when you accept that there is something called innateness, today there is no controversy on that. Nobody denies the point that only human being can acquire language, no contradiction. And the only theoretical debate going on at present is what is the structure of this universal grammar? Chomsky posited a very, very complex structure for universal grammar, starting from 1957 to Abstract's model or German writing model. It was evolving. Okay, so people are asking, okay, human beings can learn many things, okay, and like that they are learning language also. So you don't have to posit a different language module in the human brain. That is Chomsky's claim. No need of positing a different language module or universal grammar, because human beings learn many things, and all this learning is happening. All these constructs are developed through experience. It's a discovery procedure. So in the context of language, the problem is how to communicate, and the solution is you acquire a language. So even after the emergence of cognitive psychology, people are saying that, okay, why should we argue that there is an innate language module in human brain? If human beings learn many things, okay, and the general brain is involved. Okay, the same procedure. You have data, you analyze the data and make inferences, then check the inferences and that kind of thing. The same thing can be applied or extended to language context also. But then 25, 30 years ago, two cases emerged. Two cases emerged that very clearly showed that there is a dissociation between language and general intelligence. Okay. So language learning is not taken care of by general intelligence, but it is taken care of by the language module, the inbuilt module, which we call universal grammar. The two cases are, on the one hand, you have what people call Williams syndrome. Williams is the brain scientist. The patients affected by Williams syndrome are very good at language. They're over talkative. They talk, many things, never stop with one single utterance. Connected thing. They will talk about many things. Okay. So if you talk to these patients affected by Williams syndrome, you don't find any problem with them. They're very good at language, in using language. But on the other hand, there is another case called specific language impairment, SLI. The problem with these patients is that they cannot use language, with cohesion. All, stammering, broken utterances. They cannot even complete a single sentence. But if you give them a computer or some cognitive tasks of the Piagetian model, they are very good at it. So, which proves that their general intelligence is very strong at a very high level, but their language ability is at a lower level. Williams syndrome is just opposite of that. The language ability is very strong, but the cognitive faculty is very low. So there is very clearly a dissociation between general intelligence and language module. And that is why cognitive psychology is split into two. One we call mere, constructivism or cognitive constructivism. The other one you call social constructivism. The Vygotsky, school of thought, Vygotsky, latest cognitive psychologist is Brunner. They all talk about the social constructivism because we are social beings and every knowledge is to be constructed in a social context. And you cannot detach the social ambience in the context of language learning. Now the whole world is moving towards social constructivism. How do you help children to collaborate? How we help children to sit together, negotiate with one another, share their ideas, and then facilitate the learning which takes place in terms of ZPD expansion. The zone of proximal development is expanding. Okay, whereas on the other hand, the Piaget school, they follow the cognitive constructivism. They say that every individual is like a researcher, independent individual researcher, and you give the data and then the child will be able to, I need not say child, the human mind probably can process the data and then make generalizations on that. And there are, curricula which purely based on cognitive constructivism and also social constructivism. In our country, NCF, other documents, and most advanced countries, they talk about social constructivism because we are human beings living in a social context, and you cannot detach, this social context from learning anything, let alone language. So when you talk about, constructing knowledge of language, what are the challenges now? Already mentioned one challenge. How do you facilitate non-conscious acquisition of language rather than conscious learning of language? When you teach grammar, when you teach pronunciation, when you teach, answers to comprehension questions, anything that you teach will end up in learning about language, not learning language. Now, this is not clearly appreciated by our textbook designers and the ELT experts. So the basic problem with ELT is that there are many problems, and from my perspective, the most dangerous problem with the ELT schools is that they ignore the presence of innate language. Okay, and assume that language can be taught at some point. You can teach all the information, different facts of language, maybe it vocabulary, maybe it is structures, whatever. And people have lost the ability to differentiate between words and vocabulary. For most teachers, words mean the same. Vocabulary means words. And there are some vocabulary exercises in the textbook. They ask for synonyms, they ask for, antonyms or kind of thing. But vocabulary is much more than that. I'll give you one example of my experience. 2 years back, my grandchild was talking to me over the phone, video call. I was in Telangana and she was here in Kerala. So she was eating chokis from Cadbury's, cookies. And these, cookies come in two shapes. Some are, star shaped and some are, crescent moon shaped. You get it now in that bottle. And she took up a star more shaped choki, and I asked her, what are you eating? She said, it's like star. It's a star. Okay. The shape, everything. We even use Christmas stars, sometimes. Then she took the other thing, and I told her, doesn't look like a cashew nut, the shape, And she was saying, you don't know anything. How can this be cashew nut? This is the star. No, this is the crescent moon you see in the night, at night in the sky. Why I am trying this example? Every word is not a single word, but it has lot of, connectivities. See the amount of knowledge that the child has acquired. He knows that these things appear in the sky only. She knows that these appear at night, not in daytimes. And she knows that a star can coexist with a crescent moon. A cashew nut has no role there. Okay, that's a thematic connectivity. So every word, tells us about the thematic connectivities that are registered in the human mind. But what are we doing in the classroom? These words are separated from the larger context, from the ambience of the word, and taught as only words. Every word, every single word the child uses, opens up a world of experience. And conveniently, we are forgetting the world of experience, detaching the word from the world of experience and teaching it as just a word and asking for synonyms, antonyms, all kind of thing. It's a big harm, big danger. The child has all these connectivities, rich webbing, all the synaptic connections are there. I presume that you know the word of synaptic connections, okay? But then when the child reaches school, starting from LKG onwards or any pre-primary level, all the fragments are given again, whether it is in the name of, alphabets, whatever. Even NCERT book is so shocking for me. When you read NCERT position paper in language, not second language, okay? I'm talking about 2005 document, even the new NEP. You can see that, they teach 2-letter words, 3-letter words kind of thing. In grade 1 textbook of NCERT, I find that disconnected words, many number of disconnected words are there. Maybe they are saying that, okay, this is a kind of a phonic approach. So you are detaching the phone from the complexity of the speech continuum, okay? And then you're associating the letter with the sound. So A for A or A, whatever, okay? And 2-letter words are taught, 3-letter words are taught. See, you are negating the whole philosophy of language. Can any child experience this kind of learning when she acquires mother tongue? Does any mother start with in a linear model, beginning with the letters or sounds? E, today's lesson is over. No mother does that. Mothers are more sensible than teachers. So they know that the mother simply engages the child. And most importantly, the mother has no intention to teach. That is why second language theoreticians like Stephen Krashen or Pinker or Anandan, we talk about mother's talk. And there's a terminology for that. We call it motherese. How a mother talks to her child. What are the features of motherese or typical mother talk? The speed is drastically, retarded. Very slow pace of, 2, it is loaded with love, affection, concern. A language of love, affection. Okay? And every talk is, or is a networking of the needs of the child. Shall I give you milk? Like that. No mother talks about Bill Clinton, Monica issue. Talks about what the child needs, at that moment. Biologically related, and transferring love. No intention to teach anything. And the mother looks at the eyes, into the eyes, and the child responds. But when teachers become mothers, they are extremely dangerous. Teachers have a baggage of teaching. Okay, they have to teach. So through this mother the child is able to pick up language. Okay, so when I propose discourse pedagogy, the basic assumption is that I have just 2-3 assumptions on that. One, when you look at language, you see that language cannot exist, cannot survive as isolated, discrete sounds, words, sentences, and so on. It can never survive. You look at the instances of language, how people interact in day-to-day life. Nobody produces language in fragments. Suppose we go to the street and start saying some disconnected sounds or disconnected words or even disconnected sentences. How will people rate you? It is a sign of lunacy. Only mad people will talk about disconnected sentences. You know. So, looking from that perspective, you are giving excellent training on how to become mad by teaching fragmented, isolated facts of language like sounds, letters, pronunciation, whatever. So the basic philosophy of discourse pedagogy is that language exists only in the form of connected speech, which I call discourses. It is connected speech, okay, not disconnected. And the child is exposed to connected speech, not fragments. So the real sense of holistic approach to language learning will happen only when you approach language or when you do it in the classroom in the form of connected speech. The teachers have to interact with the learner. Interaction is not just asking questions. Interaction. The teacher poses a question. What kind of question? They are not random questions. For example, the teacher shows a picture and the picture generates certain percepts in their mind. A picture, there will be 40 students in the classroom and 40 children may be getting different perceptions on the picture. The objects are the same. There's a tree, there's an animal, there's a dog under the tree, all this information may be there. But then every child, connects the picture in different ways. We call them percepts. So if there are 40 students, 40 different percepts will be connected to the picture. And it is the responsibility of the teacher to find out what these children think at any point. What do they think about the picture? Their perceptions. So unless you work on the perceptions of the learner, you have no access to the inbuilt language. You will end up with teaching about language. This is a basic difference which our ELT schools have failed to notice. Even the much acclaimed communicative language teaching does not target this. Okay, so how do you approach language becomes very, very important. And I believe, not only me, people working in the same paradigm, believe that only two approaches are possible. When you talk about language pedagogy, only two approaches. Either you assume that there is something called innateness, and you have to target that. Or you assume that the mind is a tabula rasa, an empty slate, and everything regarding language comes from outside. So you have to teach. Teach, in small, beginning with the small units of language, different facts of language. You keep on teaching, the letters or sounds and words and sentences and so on. It is a bricklaying process. How a building is constructed. You take one brick, take another brick, and put it properly, and check every brick is tessellated properly. The whole structure is completed that way. It is a brick-laying process, but then language learning is not a brick-laying process. It is an organic process, a biological process. Okay, just like You are planting a sapling. What is your role? We plant a sapling, and then you see that the soil is loose enough so that the roots can go down. And you see that there is water, okay? And you take care that it is not falling down. But the ability to sprout roots is innate to the plant. You cannot do anything about it. You facilitate the growth by watering it, or planting it in a proper soil, watering it and giving a support to it and taking care of that. You don't have to worry about whether the roots are sprouting or not. And there is no assessment possible. Today you talk about continuous comprehensive assessment or evaluation, CCE. Is it possible in language context? Is it possible? Look at the sapling. You do these things. You plant it properly. You pour water. But can you test whether roots are sprouting or not? Okay, in the evening, every day evening, you lift the sapling and see whether roots are coming out and plant it again. You are killing the plant. Like a human child is growing. The mother feeds the child probably 3 times or 4 times. And after every input is given, the mother doesn't check whether the child is growing or not. It is dangerous. You can't check that way. In the evening, you cannot check the height of the child. You cannot measure the weight. There's no any change. But that doesn't demotivate the mother. Okay, I have wasted my food. Why should I feed the child at all? It is not growing. But the mother knows that the child will grow. It will be able to, certain developmental, characteristics will be displayed, manifested. The child is able to focus on something, is able to grab something. I mean, it manifests in a different way. So the very idea of continuous and comprehensive assessment or continuous and comprehensive evaluation doesn't work in the language context. In the behavioral paradigm, it is easy. Today, you teach 5 new words, and you can check, whether they have learned it or not. You teach a grammar rule, and you can check whether they have learned it or not. So continuous assessment or testing is possible in the context of teaching language and learning about language. But it doesn't work in a process where the non-conscious process is involved. There are no way. Of course, continuous assessment happens. It happens as a subconscious process. That is why today people prefer to use the term assessment to evaluation or examination. And assessment is interpreted in 2 ways. One, we talk about assessment as learning. When assessment happens, it itself is learning. Assessment and learning are not separable, like the 2 sides of a coin. Whenever a learning process happens, assessment also happens. Now, if you understand that, then you see how this can be translated into classroom practice. If at all we are serious about translating the concept of continuous assessment in the classroom. Okay. And second thing, assessment for learning. Assessment is used as a tool to facilitate further learning. So when the child is presenting something, you give feedback, okay? And that feedback helps the child to learn further. Feedback doesn't mean, saying this is correct or this is incorrect. Doesn't mean, okay, you're done, excellent, go on. No, feedback means, in the new paradigm, feedback means asking more questions. It makes the child to think, rethink, and then further constructs are developed. So 2 kinds of assessments are relevant in this pedagogy. One is assessment as learning and assessment for learning. Both facilitate acquisition, learning, or developing constructs. And the third kind of assessment you can call assessment of learning. This is just, quantifying what children have learned, maybe examinations, whether it is a monthly test or, periodical test or term examination. This all is assessment of learning, how much the child has learned. So for the new paradigm, the formative assessment, which is developmental, only is relevant. The other assessment is not relevant for language acquisition. But for social auditing, it is necessary. institutions need that, administration need that. You have to show some records to show that children are learning. Some records are be produced. Therefore, you have to have examination. You have to have some rubrics for that. And you have to have some kind of grading method also for that. But that really doesn't matter for helping the children acquire the language system. System is holistic. And you cannot teach anything about the system by teaching its fragments. Human beings have a limitation. We cannot, conceive the whole and part together. When you look at the whole, you miss the part. And when you look at the part, you miss the whole. It is like someone who goes to the forest and asks, okay, where is the forest? I don't see any forest here. There are only trees. So in the language context, we teach all the parts. We teach word meaning, we teach grammatical elements, we teach many, many, many things. It's all parts of language, and it is all teaching about language. So as I said a moment ago, for me, discourse pedagogy implies, number one, language survives only in the form of connected speech or discourses. And second thing, language acquisition happens by producing discourses. It's not that you teach about language and later they produce language. No. So discourse production is the only tool available for language acquisition. And discourse production is possible only by interacting with the human mind. Teachers ask a question and then wait till how the human mind responds to your question. And then you have to build up a shared understanding about the implications of the question. So you interact with other children. Okay, this boy has said something. Do you agree with that? Or do you have something else to say? There's a dialoguing happening between the teacher and the learners in the class. So for me, interaction in the class means dialoguing with the learners. Let be any response. Divergent responses, fine. But every response is valuable. The teacher has to build on this response and enter in the process of dialoguing. Okay, this boy has come out with an idea. Does anyone have any other idea? So there are different linguistic tools, to be used for interaction. Like, asking for agreement. Do you agree with him? Asking for opinion. What is your opinion? Do you have any other opinion? Asking for interpretation. Why do you think so? So this way, the teacher enters in the process of dialoguing with the learners. This is the real sense of interaction. Otherwise, it is just asking questions to transmit an information. So if you do it, the brain will respond to that. Please remember one thing. The human brain cannot process discrete information. Brain is a very complex phenomenon, and it has to go for the very complex system. A systemic approach is needed. What the brain has to do, the teacher need not interfere. Allow the brain to deal with that. So you engage the child, make him think, respond to his thought, share with others. This is the only thing we have to do. And they will come out with a nameable discourse, maybe a description. Maybe you are introducing 4 lines of a poem, they generate their own poems. Okay, or you give a picture and then ask them to build a narrative on that, or going or talking about what happened before that, what happened after that. Okay, like that. So there could be some nameable discourses. 18 or 20 different academic discourses can be worked out in the classroom. So our responsibility is that then you have to forget the graded series totally. I presume you understand what I mean by graded series. Certain number of structures are taught for the beginners. The higher you go up, more structures are taught or more vocabulary items are introduced. It's a gradation happening. So instead of gradation in terms of sentences and words, we have to go for discourse gradation. A picture description is targeted in grade 1. It has to be targeted in 10th class also. But then the features of the discourse will be different. You have a hierarchy of features. Or a story may be targeted in grade 1, but you can also go for a story, maybe short story writing, whatever, in 8th class, 9th class, 10th class, or even lower classes. So a story also has inherent features. Okay? An event and a dialogue together make the minimal structure of a discourse. So there are two things now. First of all, the teachers have to understand clearly the features of each discourse. I'm sorry. Features of each discourse. What are the features of a discourse called description? Or what are the features of a narrative? What are the features of a speech? And this can be hierarchically placed. To give an example, the simple story has a structure of event, at least one event, and a dialogue related to that. I'll give an example. Okay, the boy saw a butterfly. Ha, nice butterfly. See, he saw the butterfly is an event, a happening, and how the child responds to that event is the dialogue. This is the minimal structure. So if you go higher up, you can have sequence of events. Okay. Second thing, you can talk about sensory perceptions, talking about the details of the butterfly. Okay. Not simply saying, what a beautiful butterfly, but talking about its color, or talking about the smell that is coming from the garden. So you have features of connected to sensory perceptions, what the character can see, can hear, can smell, that kind of thing. Or slightly higher level, you can also talk about the what you call the point of view. From which point of view you are talking about an event, or talking about the emotions or feelings of a character. So I'm trying to say that the first thing required for teachers to understand that every discourse has its own hierarchy of features. In Telangana, if you look at Telangana textbooks and handbooks, you can see that all these things are tabulated in the proper form. You can see that every discourse with its features starting from grade 1 to 10th class. And second thing, what teachers may need is that you have to switch over to a domain called discourse grammar. Today, we are satisfied with teaching sentence grammar. I have two objections. One, there's no need to teach formal grammar. Second thing, if at all any grammar is relevant, that is discourse grammar. I'll explain. Imagine somebody saying, where are you going? A conversation. I'm going to Calicut. Why are you going to Calicut? I'm going to Calicut because I want to buy a new blah, blah, blah. See, every sentence is grammatical. Every sentence is grammatical. And there can be a series of exchanges in this manner with full-fledged sentences, but that is not how human beings talk. Where are you going? To Calicut. There is something called economy of expression. You cut short. Okay, so this may be a grammatically acceptable sentence, but it is not acceptable in the domain of discourses. Think about the classic works like Alice in Wonderland or other novels. Can you think about rewriting these wonderful creations using full-fledged grammar? No, you will kill that book. So discourse grammar sometimes retains sentence grammar, sometimes it deviates from sentence grammar, goes for short responses, other kind of expressions are possible. So teachers have to understand, first of all, what discourse is. 2, what are the features of each discourse. 3, what is the domain of discourse grammar. When children produce these discourses, how do you work on that? So this is totally neglected by the typical ELT schools. Okay, so we have to rework on these things if at all we are serious about helping children to produce language. So my expectation of a grade 1 or grade 2 student will be, he will be able to produce children's literature. Just forget about children as receiving the content of the textbook, but work out a pedagogy which will help them to produce children's literature. They produce their own stories, poems, blah, blah, blah kind of thing. So you have to target to help them to evolve as independent writers, not just receivers of or recipients of the input. So this is all what I have to say. We have other discussions. Okay, we can talk. I mean, it's a big ocean. You have to work on many aspects of that. I tell you have to break the conventional beliefs about language, because a real paradigm shift also means a shift in the belief systems. So we'll be happy when we work on these things again. I hope some of you may be confused, some of you will be, even irritated. Doesn't matter, And just one more minute, just one minute more. Who is a good communicator? If you understand whatever I say, probably I'm not a good communicator. If you don't understand anything, again, I am not. But if I'm able to disturb you a little bit, then I have communicated something. If I am able to confuse you a little bit, I am happy. I have communicated something. Okay. So thank you very much, both Secretary Saheb, everybody. I'm very happy to be a part of this. My honor, I repeat, to be this prestigious institution. Okay. And let us see how we can collaborate further. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. And let me tell you, sir, that of course we have understood a lot many things, and we surely are confused in many points also. But that is what, as you said, learning is all about. We are really delighted to hear so many things. You started with Plato's questions. You referred Stephen Krashen, learning and acquisition, the expander, Das Gupta. You also talked about George Orwell, the Animal Farm, Williams syndrome, SLI, cognitive and social constructivism, words and vocabulary assessment and learning, linguistic tools, discourse grammar, and so many other points. I'm sure that there are many research issues have also emerged from whatever you said, and you have really, inspired us to think on so many issues. I'm sure that from the audience, so many people must be having so many questions, but then we shall deal with the question answer a little later. First of all, we have amongst us the Secretary of Charutar Vidya Mandal, Dr. S.G. Patel, sir, and we are glad that he is along with us. I would request S.G. Patel, sir, to express his ideas in this discourse. Sir, over to you, sir. S.G. Patel, sir.
S.G. Patel, sir, please unmute yourself. Please, sir. Your mic is muted.
Sir, you will have to unmute your mic.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Dr. K.N. Anandan,
Yeah.
my fellow friend, Principal Talati, sir, and if present, President and Chairman, Dr. Bhubhai Patel Saheb, Principal of the College, Dr. N.V. Bose, Dr. Maunus Thakur, Dr. Anil Varsad, Dr. Chirag Darji, and my dear participants who are interestingly attending this a wonderful program, that what we are calling it as 117th birth anniversary of our beloved founder, Dr. H.M. Patel Saheb. Friends, indeed it is my pleasure to join with all of you and things what is being expected by all of us, and that is being delivered by Dr. Anandan sir. Friends, he has tried to take care of English language teaching and taking the story since 1930 in different steps till today. Today we are having the green signal from the government of India on the new education policy, and in that one, language issue is very well discussed. Here, learning language maybe consciously or non-consciously, that can be balanced. What is being judged by Dr. Anandan. At the same time, he talked about emotions and body language, and we did not bother when we use our spoken language to get the grammar point or inbuilt grammar. including the 8 different parts of speech. Knowledge of language is from the birth of every individual, but the schooling and especially English language teaching colleges are taking better care for improving the language capabilities and many more things. Especially this institute is working for preparing the English language teachers. I understand this program, memorial lecture, will definitely help and many more than what the people have joined with us. The reason, even after this recorded message will help the people who cannot join. Once again, I would like to congratulate the speaker, being the best one that he has delivered to all of us. At the same time, I would like to congratulate the team under the leadership of Dr. N.V. Bose. Once again, I am very happy to share my views and greet all of you. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Namaskar, sir. I hope a few questions can be asked, if anyone wants to.
Yes, sir. Before we move to the question answer, sir, we have a message from our beloved chairman, sir, of Charutar Vidya Mandal. He has conveyed his regards and he has also sent his video message. I would request Rodia, sir, to play his video message.
Sure.
Chief guest, my dear colleagues from CVM, principal, invited guest, staff members and dear students. My warm greeting to all of you present in the online celebration of Founders Day. Today is the 117th birthday of the founder of this institute, Dr. H.M. Patel sir. After the initial foundation of Charutar Vidya Mandal by Sri Bhaikaka and Sri Bhikhabhai Saheb, Dr. H.M. Patel Saheb nurtured it. He was a voracious trader and visionary leader, having an excellent managing skills. This institute came into existence due to his powerful vision. I am really happy that H.M. Patel Institute celebrate his birthday by inviting renowned experts for delivering memorial lecture every year. On behalf of Charutar Vidya Mandal and my personal behalf, I pay tribute to Dr. H.M. Patel Sahib. I am thankful to Dr. K.N. Anandan, the renowned linguist and ELT specialist, for his thought-provoking memorial lecture. And I congratulate Team H.M. Patel for successful organization of today's function. My best wishes are always with the Institute. Jai Sardar, Jai Vidyanagar.
Thank you for the message.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. And now
I would appreciate a few questions, probably some 10, 15 minutes we can talk. After that, we can sit alone with your faculty or whatever you want, sort of,
Yes.
So right now, anyone can, if anyone wants to ask a question, welcome that.
Yes, so the forum is open. All the attendees, if you have any questions, please ask.
If I may, sir.
Please introduce yourself.
This is Lakshmi Muthukumar. I'm Dr. Lakshmi Muthukumar. I head the Department of English at SIS College, Sion West, Mumbai. Namaskaram, sir. It was an honor, absolute privilege listening to you, sir. And thank you for that brilliant session. And thanks to the organizers for having organized it. My question, sir, while you were talking, you mentioned that you had posed a question to Noam Chomsky, sir, right? And he had responded. I would like you to please let me know what your exact question was. It was too quick for me to grab.
Yeah, so I'm sorry for that, because we talk in a language that others do not understand. So this is a problem, when you, for example, my PhD program, I was working on and, a simple sentence in English. John and Mary bought 10 books. Okay. So this was my, problem for 7 years. You may wonder what is the problem happened about this sentence, The problem is that the standard assumption is that every structure has a certain meaning. These are fundamental things of linguistics, So if there is a different structure meaning, that means there is a different structure also. Okay, take a classic example, like flying planes can be dangerous. Okay, can have two meanings: somebody flying planes or flying plane together as an object. So here, John and Mary bought 10 books. Has an ambiguity in the sense that did they buy the books collectively or individually? Two meanings are possible. Okay, but there is only one simple structure. If you want to question the whole coordinate structure, John and Mary moves together. Who did buy the book? The answer is John and Mary. You cannot question only John or Mary. You don't get that. A coordinate structure always moves collectively. The whole structure is there. But then two meanings are available. So the present theory, the Chomskyan model of linguist theory, has no explanation why this structure is allowing two different meanings. So that was my investigation. What has universal grammar to do with that? Okay, so it went on. Now, my question specifically to Chomsky was, I was asking, what is the social analog of move alpha? Okay, so Chomsky at some point said, he was responding to the question from the media. You are a linguist basically, but your pamphlets are talking about political issues, economic problems, all kind of thing. Okay, political theories. Then how are you able to manage the different, apparently different disciplines? On the one hand, economics or political theory or history, many things. So he said these are the same thing. Nobody understood that, So when we talk about universal grammar, okay, for my understanding, for my interpretation, universal grammar doesn't deal with grammar of any particular language. It talks about all the possible languages. I suppose you got the meaning. Okay, so any possible language, including Esperanto, which is an artificially created language. And universal grammar has two aspects. One, it has a set of system of principles. Principles deal with the commonalities of languages. Whether you are speaking Hindi or English or anything, there are many, many things common. That is why at some point Chomsky has said, more than dissimilarities between languages, there are similarities. Suppose somebody comes from another planet like Mars, a Martian may think all human beings talk the same language because the similarities are predominant. This one thing. Whereas the other aspect of universal grammar is parameters. A parameter differentiate between two languages. To make a simple example, look at the constituent relationship of a phrase in English. take a verb phrase, eat a banana. Eat is the verb, it transitive demands banana, so the object is always following the verb. But in our languages, it doesn't happen like that. We say banana ate, whether it's Dravidian language or even in language. So there is a universal grammar. One of the rule parameter is decides the positioning or configuration of the head and the complement. With the newborn child, universal grammar has a set of unspecified parameters. The newborn child has both parameters available, okay, regarding the structuring of a constituent, where should the head come and where should the complement come. So you can have two possibilities. One, you can have head initial languages, or you can have head final languages. This is an option available in the universal grammar. Are you getting my point? Okay, so universal grammar with the optimal evidence, lot of teaching, nothing's needed. With the minimal meaningful evidence, the child mechanism, the input language mechanism identifies the positioning of the head and the complement. So language acquisition can be interpreted as fixing the parametric value. There could be other parameters like this. I'm giving one example. Okay, so language acquisition can be renamed as identifying the or fixing or fixation of the parameters, different parameters, right? Now, there are different, I talked about principles. So one of the principles you can see that there's something called binding theory, wherever these words are appearing, there's some kind of, relation between the members of within a constituent. Okay, the tall boy near my house, okay, or at my neighborhood. The whole thing is a noun phrase, but it gets an embedded preposition phrase like that. The language has the embedding phenomenon. And then in one of the properties that a category in a sentence can be moved by move alpha. There's a single rule in grammar, only single rule. It's called move alpha. Alpha means the smallest unit of language. Okay, maybe a word, a lexicon. Okay, so a word is displaced from its original position to another position, like in question formation in English. Are you going home? Where the auxiliary is inverted. This is a classical movement of a movement when a question is formed, or the movement happening in the passive construction where the things are moving or displaced from the original positions. Okay, but even if you move, to the beginning, the meaning is retained intact, right? Right. So move alpha applies to a sentence structure and works on the positioning of different alpha. Either it displaces, or it deletes it, or it adds another alpha there. So only three kinds of transformations are possible. Either you move something, or you delete something, or you insert something. So move alpha has been later interpreted as affect alpha, and affect alpha is affected. Okay. Now, as I said, for me, universal grammar is a theory of grammar which is relevant for not only all languages, but all structures, including social structure. Are you getting my point? So like the sentence structure, in society also is a hierarchy. So what is the alpha in social terms? Who is the alpha? The individual is the alpha in social domain. The individual alpha, a family, the next hierarchical structure, different families together, the neighborhood or village, right? Or a district or a state or the center. This is a hierarchical structure, yes or no? So something at the top of the apex structure, like the center, anything happening, it percolates down to all the features. Whatever happens at the center, it is administered there. And because the hierarchical nature, the structure allows the percolation down. From top, it percolates down to the bottom. A reverse percolation also can happen. From the bottom, certain features percolate upwards. It's a very complicated thing, forget about thing. Okay, anyway, so if you translate move alpha into social terms, move alpha to social terms, how do you interpret move alpha? Remember, in social terms, alpha means human being. We are the smallest units in the society. Yes or no? Every individual is an alpha. So move alpha can be interpreted as giving freedom to alpha. Freedom to move to certain positions, freedom to disappear, or freedom to appear in a different position, right? So in social terms, the interpretation of move alpha will be giving freedom to the individual. They agree. But our present structures, how much freedom is there for individual? That is why you have different setups. For example, in a capital society, is the individual freedom retained? No. Okay. So the only possible candidate is a democratic setup where people believe in different ideologies, still they are bound together within a certain structure. So within the structure, without collapsing the structure, individual freedom can be exercised. Suppose I do anything that I want, then it may disrupt the societal structure, the hierarchy, everything. That is going to be very harmful. So there are constraints on the freedom of alpha. Are you getting my point? So what are the social principles will retain the individual freedom optimally? I'm deliberately choosing words, without affecting the structure or without collapsing the structure. And what are binding forces that bind people together? Now, money can be a binding force. Capital societies are, the connection with is money only. Money binds them together. I have more money, so I can employ somebody else to work for me. Or an ideology can be a binding force, like the communist countries. An ideology, even though communism has disappeared, okay? Forget about that. So ideology, a political ideology can be a binding force. It can put people together. Or can be religion. In the name of religion, people can be brought together, right? So the question is, what is the ideal, binding force for a society which will ensure maximum freedom for the individual without creating chaos? So this was my question. What is the analog of move alpha, social analog of move alpha? And what are the constraints on that? It's a very heavy topic. There are many things to understand that.
Very curious. Okay. Thank you for that explanation.
Okay. Anyway, I'm interested in this question. I'm working on that. Okay. Anyone else?
May I, sir?
Yeah, sure. Who is
okay, myself, Nikunj P. Gayekwa. I'm a BA trainee of HM Patel. So, sir, as you said earlier that there is one of the problem with the second language learner is that they think in the their mother language or the mother tongue. So is it possible to make them think in the English, like whenever they speak, they don't have to think, but just like they speak, they don't aware about all that?
We can help them produce language, speak language, but why do you connect with the thinking? You can't think in a language and speak. You speak, that's all. Thinking is language neutral, You just think. And thinking takes place very fast, faster than any possible computer. Okay? Maybe you are, that's why you give the example of a dream, A dream may have occurred in a fraction of a second or 1 second. But when you talk about the dream, you have to use many, many sentences to talk about that. The whole dream has happened, occurred in the limited duration of 1 second or half a second. But if you explain the dream and keep writing, you need pages to write that. Okay? So human beings cannot think in any language. But thought is necessary. Thought triggers. And you are using language to express your thought. Therefore, I believe, and I am also a demonstrator, the only tonic required for language development is thinking. Thinking. If you go to Telangana and ask teachers, what did you get from Anandan? They will say, stop teaching. Stop teaching and ask questions. The only tool available for teacher is to ask a question. But what kind of question? It's not all kind of thematically unrelated questions, but thematically related questions which target the perception of the learners. The perceptions matters. And when we are giving a space for the learner to talk about her perception, you are giving a tonic to the language development. The inner language starts working. See, I told you example, you are not aware of the inner language. We are not aware. That's why in one paper, somebody said, you don't know what you know. And you don't know what you don't know also. This limitation of human being. You don't know that there is a grammar working inside you. You are not aware of that. I'll give an example in English. Not my example. This example is from Chomsky again. Like, take two sentences like, John thinks he is intelligent. John thinks he is intelligent. What is the meaning of he? Who is this he? Of course, it is John. Yes or no? John thinks he is intelligent. So he is interpreted as John. John is the antecedent of he. Now, just think another sentence like, he thinks John is intelligent. Now, who is this he? Of course, it is not John. It is somebody else. He thinks John is intelligent. Right? So how does this pronoun he get two different interpretations? No grammar book deals with this question. He stands for a pronoun, it's a pronoun, it stands for John. But then how the pronoun is interpreted is purely the play of inner grammar, universal grammar. You have no understanding about that. In any language, this is the only way, right? And this is an area that normal grammar cannot take up. Are you getting my point? Okay. So what the grammar book can deal with is like the tip of an iceberg. Any grammar book, even the very voluminous grammar book like Kirk and others, HMPIETR grammar book, comprehensive English grammar, any grammar book for that matter, deals with very limited things, and they cleverly hide many sensible questions. No grammar book asks a question, what is the tense of a sentence? He can drive. He can drive. What tense is that? Present tense, past tense, future tense? So when you deal with the modal verbs like can, may, shall, they talk about the meaning of this verb. Can for ability, can for permission, all kind of thing. They don't talk about the tense there. Tense is restricted to other verbs. And you are given a wrong story about tense. You say that there is future tense which does not exist. Okay. Okay. So since you cannot think any language, you can ask questions to make them think. Certain percepts are developed. Okay. And you can pose a question which will take out what they think about a certain thing. And that is required for language development, not teaching language. Not teaching about language like vocabulary, meaning, anything that you name in the classroom context. So every teacher in the modern times should be sensitive to filter out the non-essential components from the textbook and go for the essential components. This is my mission. First of all, there are no textbooks needed at all. Well, let us say, let us go for it. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Hello, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, sure. Who is speaking?
My name is Anandan Christy.
Okay.
Student from HMPIETR. Sir, I have a question. As we were discussing about LID and universal grammar. So, do you think that language learning is related with eating? For example, for experiment, if we do an experiment, like if we take a child, a small child, away from the society, we are not providing any exposure of language to him, and at the age of 18 or 16, okay, we bring him back to the society. So he will start learning language as a small child is learning in normal condition or situation.
Yeah, this was experimented years back when Chomsky proposed the idea of LAD. So a human child, who was identified, grown up in the forest, after at a certain mature age, he came to the human society, and how Jenny, her name is Jenny. So how Jenny was, after a few months, Jenny was almost, you could not differentiate with the Jenny and other children. The moment the child is put in this one society, the inner language starts working. So this was a potential question. There are three questions in the context of universal grammar. Remember, universal grammar is the later terminology. Earlier it was named as LAD. Now, question. ELT experts across the world were saying, okay, Chomsky's theory is relevant for L1. L1 means mother tongue, okay, but not relevant for L2. L2 is any other language, other than mother tongue. So universal grammar theory is relevant for L1 because we all acquire mother tongue, but second language cannot be acquired that way because there is no speech community around. Okay, so there is no way to get the same kind of linguistic inputs in the context of second language. So some amount of teaching is necessary. Only mother tongue can be required. You interpret the statement very clearly. So the ELT in assumption was that L1, in the context of L1, UG theory is relevant, but not relevant in the context of L2. But then that also cannot be accepted. People go outside. Many people from Kerala go to Gulf countries, and within 6 months they start speaking Arabic, without any formal teaching. Okay, they use it. So the three assumptions on UG was, UG is available only for L1. Second, UG is available for L2 also. Or a third position is that some part of UG is necessary for second language, and some part of teaching also is necessary. Three positions can be taken up. One, UG is not accessible for second language or partially acceptable. My hypothesis and my effort has been to show that UG is fully acceptable to the child. The only prerequisite is you stop worrying about teaching something, but just talk, interact with the child. Only tool required for the teacher is interaction. Nothing more. Nothing more. Believe me, even very complicated grammar will be acquired. See, another thing is that, people think about, simple thing, complex thing. In fact, everything is complex. There's nothing in this world which is simple. Nothing in this world. Especially in language also. Okay? There's nothing simple. It's very complicated. I'll give you an example. Taking a story, children's story, like there was a crow or there was a farmer. So you know the meaning of was, okay? You translate any language, you have the same equivalent of there was a farmer. So what is the meaning of was? What is the meaning of was? The semantics of was? Maybe you'll give me the mother tongue equivalent. Okay. But I will ask the question again. What is the meaning of was? It's a big question. Okay. So I'll ask another question. Does was contain negation? Does it negate anything? Does was negate anything? Think twice. When you say was, what is the implied meaning? Was is the past tense form of be. Be verb. Be is an existential verb. It talks about existence. There exists. That's the meaning of is. Okay? So on the one hand, was negates the existence of something. There was. And something can exist in a certain location. There is no existence in the vacuum. Any object exists somewhere. So an existential verb automatically brings in the location. So where does it exist? There is a car in the garage, That existence is to be linked to the existence of something at some position. At some point, time also is there. It exists now. So was means What is the paraphrase of was then? Something that existed at some point in the past does not exist now. That's the meaning of was. Very complicated. So don't imagine that there are simple things. Nothing is simple in this world. Everything is very complicated, very complex. When a child looks at a toy, suppose a 2-year-old child or 3-year-old child has visited neighborhood and happens to see a toy and said, okay, I have this toy at home. I have this toy at home. Obviously, that this toy is interpreted in an abstract sense. So even the small children can use every word in a concrete sense and also in an abstract sense. When the child says, I want this toy, is specifically very concrete. But when the child says, I have this toy at home, he talks about something has the same features which he possesses at home. Every word is registered and stored in abstraction. Okay, we call an animal called cat. Mother says a cat. The child is watching the cat for the first time. He associates the physical structure, some features of it, and maybe the voice, sound, everything. But when the child sees another cat, which may be a different color, different size, but still he uses it as a cat. Are you getting my point? You talk about a tree, a mango tree. Look at every mango tree is different from the other mango tree. Every leaf is different. Every leaf on the same tree is different. Okay, so when the child uses a word, he is using that word in a concrete situation, but the registrations have happened in an abstract sense. Every word is stored in mental representation of lexicon. How the lexicon is represented in the human brain. It is an abstraction with a set of features. And that is why the difference between word and the vocabulary. So the exercise you are giving for vocabulary development, in fact, does not address that need at all. You are analyzing a part of it. Let me try to explain. Every word has a set of features. Let's say feature matrix. How it is pronounced, the sound that is there. So there's a phonological feature for every word. There is a semantic feature, the meaning in a certain context. I repeat, meaning in a certain context. Okay? And it has certain categorical features. Word, maybe talking about an object, maybe talking about an action. So it talks about certain categorical features. Talking about certain, what we call the functional features, like what can it take before that, what can it take after that, that kind of thing. So the whole feature matrix together makes a word vocabulary. And the child is using a word means he has registered all these different features. And you are dealing with only the meaning part of it when you are doing a synonym exercise or antonym, or other kind of vocabulary exercises. Talks about only one aspect of the feature matrix. But the child in natural context acquires the entire, bundle of features simultaneously and connects with many other things. Because the child doesn't go for individual examples, goes for generalizations. And that is why we need to approach grammar as a system of phenomena, different phenomena. Take an example, transitivity is a phenomenon. But transitivity is a phenomenon common for verbs and other verbs also, other words also. Prepositions are also transitive. You cannot use a word in isolation, in verb, at what. It always demands something after that, like a transitive verb. So prepositions have objects, verbs also have objects. So transitivity is a phenomenon which cuts across verbs and also prepositions. So to acquire this feature of transitivity, it's not essential that they have to learn many transitive verbs. Even learning preposition will help to fix the transitivity value of words. I know that I'm talking about very complex things, but then this is how it works. That's why acquisition is moving in a very fast track. And as I told you, the grammarians are in fact cheating us, many ways, multiple ways. Okay, They talk about transitive verb, intransitive verb, but then the story doesn't stop there. Take a word like sentence like the door opened. By itself, opening is a transitive verb, but in this example, it is used as intransitive, like glass broke. The glass broke. Okay. So you get an example where a transitive verb is used as intransitive verb, or you get a similar example where intransitive verb is used as a transitive. Could you sleep, my baby? Could you sleep, my baby? Sleep originally is an intransitive verb, but here it is used as a transitive verb. What are you doing? Oh, I am walking my dog. I am walking my dog. So you need a third category where transitive verbs are becoming intransitive. We call them ergative verbs. You need a fourth category where intransitive verbs are becoming transitive. That category has not been named. Slowly we will name that also. So you cannot stop anywhere. You cannot simply stop by, okay, there are two categories of verbs. No, there are many categories of verbs which we are not aware of. Okay. Are you getting me? Are you satisfied with my example? Yes, so, when you talk about UG, you cannot teach UG. It is have to happen in the mind. It will work by itself. You don't have to worry about that. As a teacher, our responsibility is to ask questions which will touch their emotions, touch their percepts. Every learning needs to be supported by an emotional component. That is why neuroscientists say every construct is found when the empathetic nerves are charged, and empathetic nerves are related to feelings and emotions. Today, brain science has developed so much. But even then, there are many, many dark areas about the brain. We don't know. Maybe 5% of about brain we know, but 90% still unexplored. We don't know. We don't know brain. Okay. Any more questions?
So thank you very much, sir. I think now formally we should put a full stop to this discussion because we are running out of time.
Okay, sure.
Of course, we can carry on later on informally, but I think right now we must close the session. I would request Dr. Mayur Parmar, sir, to propose the vote of thanks. And then the faculty members can remain in the meeting. Rest of the people can leave the meeting. Over to you, Mayur, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Manas, sir. Yes, it was indeed a great tribute paid to the son of the soil, Dr. HMPIETR Saheb. I take this opportunity to say a big thank you from the bottom of my heart to Professor Anandan, sir. Sir, the Institute is really grateful that you accepted our invitation and you graced this occasion with a wonderful interactive session. Thank you very much, sir, for confusing us, for making us think, for letting us know that we should stop teaching because nothing, at least language cannot be taught. That much I have understood.
Very
thank
good.
You. And thank you, sir, once again for making abstract things in a concrete manner presented, sir. Thank you very much. We all, I'm sure on behalf of all the participants, delighted participants, I must say, we all are thankful to you, sir, and we are looking forward to having such more interaction sessions with you in the days to come as well. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you all.
I take this opportunity to extend my gratitude, my